Welcome, I'm Holly, and today we are going to make honey whole wheat bread. This is a loaf that we prepared yesterday, and you're going to join me in the kitchen today as we make 2 more loaves. Bread baking has been around for thousands of years, and for many families was a staple in their home. For generations, this would have been a way of life for many families when times were hard and food was scarce. Today we're fortunate to have modern technology where bread baking is a lot easier. We do have a bread machine here at the Learning Lifestyle Revival, but I think sometimes making it by hand makes it taste just a little bit better. Now, what we're going to do today is use our mixer and then do part by hand to show you how to knead dough, which is a fun experience for all ages. Getting your hands in there and being a part of the food that you serve to your family can make it extra special. So join us back over at the mixer and let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is add our flours together. We've started with 2 cups of whole wheat flour and 1 cup of our white bread flour along with the yeast. We're going to give it a little mix and then we'll add in our liquid that we were heating on the stove. Now we're going to mix this together until it's mixed well, and then we'll start adding in the rest of our flour. We're going to add in 1 cup of flour at a time, and we have about 3 more cups to add to our bread. So I want you to notice how thick our mixture is becoming with the dough. And so now I'm going to change out into our dough paddle to finish our mixing here with the mixer. Now that we have our dough hook on, we're going to continue to add the rest of the flour to our recipe, just a little bit at the time until it's all incorporated. And what we're looking for is that the dough is pulling away from the container. Notice that our dough has now pulled away from the edges, and we've mixed for a few minutes, and we'll finish our mixing by hand. Now that we've mixed our ingredients in our mixing bowl, I wanted to do the rest by hand and show you how to knead dough. I'm taking a little bit of extra flour and putting it on our cutting board. And with a floured hand, I'm going to pull our dough out. And mixing kneading dough is a little bit of an art to it, as my grandmother used to say, but it doesn't matter how long it takes to practice, you'll get it in the end. For her, she used to show me that you would take your dough, tuck it, and push it out. So we're gonna turn, tuck, and push is the method that my grandmother taught me. So we're turning the dough, we're lifting up the front, we're tucking it in and pushing it out. We're gonna do this for a few minutes. Now I think that making bread is probably how pioneer women kept their arms nice and pretty. It was a good workout to make bread. It's also a good stress reliever as well, with lots of kids running around. That's why I enjoy doing the kneading at the end myself. Doing it for 10 minutes is a very long time when you're kneading bread, but just doing it at the end gives you that feeling of really being a part of the process of making bread and putting your special touch on it. Now, my son Grant, he is the master bread maker in our house. I don't know what it is that he does, but his kneading has a special touch, and they're always the highest rising bread that we have around here. All right. This is a great activity for children because it's almost like Play-Doh, but you get to eat it in the end. The recipe that we're using calls for 2 loaves of bread. So you could divide the loaf up if you'd like and give some to each child to play with that doesn't have to be baked in the end. All right. Incorporating that. Okay, so we have our nice, beautiful dough. We are going to put it back in our mixing bowl. We're going to cover it with a towel and let it rest for 1 hour or till it's doubled in size. So for our mixing bowl, our bread should rise up over the top, and that way I'll know it's done for our next step. While the dough's rising, I'm going to take a few minutes and go ahead and grease my baking pans. I have 2 different kinds here and 2 different sizes, and I tell you, I've been baking bread a long time and there really isn't one that I have a favorite. I do have a stoneware loaf pan, and then I have just a regular non-stick smaller loaf pan, and both produce beautiful loaves of bread. Now, when we're doing the recipe, we divide it in half, and I know there are a couple different sizes, but what happens is the bread will actually rise and form to the size that you have. So you don't have to have a very specific size for your bread. Now, what I like to grease it with is a little bit of butter. So I'm just taking a napkin, putting butter on it, and going up the sides and all on the bottom. That helps to give it a nice crisp crust on the bottom, and it won't be gooey. So these will be ready when our bread's ready to divide. Our dough has now doubled in size. As you can see, it's coming up over the top of our mixing bowl. So what I'm going to do is take it out onto our cutting board. And it's big and it's kind of foamy, and that's the yeast working. And let's see, I don't have a knife, so let me just break it apart into 2 halves. Okay. What I'm going to do is roll this out in sort of a rectangle. Because we're actually going to roll it up and then put it in our pan. It's okay if it's not exactly even, because when it does its second rise, it'll all work out. So now what I'm going to do is take this and start at this end and roll it. And I'm going to roll it tight. Roll it up and gather all the pieces. It's okay if it's a little sticky. So then we have a roll like this, and we're going to tuck the edges in a little bit. and I'm gonna place it inside our loaf pan. So it's gonna look like this, and these are gonna rise for another 30 minutes, and they'll take the shape of your pan. So it doesn't matter that the pans aren't exactly even. If your dough is a little too sticky, you might wanna put just a touch of flour down as you roll it out. Rolling is also another fun thing for children to do. Not every recipe of bread calls for you to roll out the dough. I have several that just call for cutting it in half and placing it in the pan. This one I think helps with the texture and making it nice and even on the inside. Again, rolling it out doesn't have to be perfect because the rising is going to help fill in all the gaps anyway. So again, we're going to roll it. Kind of like a jelly roll. I probably should have used a little bit of flour, but that's okay. So here's our second loaf. Again, we're going to tuck in the edges and then put it down in our loaf pan. We're going to set our loaf pans here and let the bread rise again for another 30 minutes. And I'll cover it with a cloth. And doing that helps to keep it moist on top and not dry it out. So we'll check on it again in 30 minutes. Our bread has been rising in the loaf pans for about 40 minutes. And you can see that it rises into a beautiful shape, and it doesn't matter the size of the pan, it's going to form to whatever the size is. I've preheated the oven to 375 degrees, and so we'll bake them for about 30 to 40 minutes until the tops are golden brown. A lot of times I like to put a piece of tin foil over the top so they don't get too brown during the cooking. Our bread has come out of the oven. It's been cooling on our rack for about 20 minutes, and I just took this loaf out. Isn't it beautiful? And now we'll take the other one. So our one recipe has made 2 loaves of bread. I'm going to cut into this one. I usually have a boy that comes through that wants to eat the end piece. We'll see if that happens. The texture has turned out really nice. It's all firm, there's no holes, and it's going to be a great loaf for us to use for our sandwich bread this week. So I hope you enjoy making your own honey whole wheat bread.